Hello, good evening, welcome friends. How are you all? I'm so glad to see so many of you I know and a few who I don't recognize. It's always a pleasure to welcome you all into the Norwich Bookstore, which, if you don't know, is where you find yourself on this fine evening. Thank you so much for spending a little time with us. My name is Sam. I'm one of the proprietors of this store. And on behalf of all of us here, we're glad to welcome you and a very exciting poet that we are very excited to hear from tonight. I've been looking forward to this event. I imagine some of you have as well, and so we'll get right to it. But first of all, if I can ask you at this time to please turn off any cell phones, pagers, electronic devices, silence those right now. If you've got a musical instrument, now is the time to stow that for the remainder of the talk. This is especially important because tonight, as some of you probably have noticed, we are recording this event for JAM, Junction Arts and Media, formerly known as CATV here in the Upper Valley. What an incredible community resource we have in JAM, folks. They are a nonprofit media sort of nerve center for the Upper Valley, in addition to being our public access television and streaming service. They are recording these talks. They are recording events around town. They're also recording our civic duties, our school board meetings and our select board meetings, but they're also serving as an incubator for the community. They're recording podcasts. They're teaching kids how to use cameras. It's all kinds of cool stuff. I really encourage you to check out their website, which is jamuv.org. And while you're there, you can also look at some of their archive of past events that they've recorded here at the bookstore and around the community. And we are very grateful to JAM for being here. So thank you so much. If you enjoy what you hear tonight, you want to come see more events with us, I hope you'll sign up for our email newsletter. You can do so on our website, which is norwichbookstore.com. You can also follow us on social media, where we're at Norwich Bookstore on most major platforms. And there you'll see a rolling list of what we've got coming up. Many of our events are free. Many of them are held right here in this space. And we'd love to see you back again sometime soon. So we thank you. Now, this whole thing, this bookstore, this event series, all of it is supported by one thing and one thing only. And that, of course, is book sales. And book sales are also the thing that supports the poets and the authors that we welcome here, and that support the small presses who work very hard to put out this kind of work. So if you enjoy what you hear tonight, I encourage you, don't be shy, head on back to the front and see Emma there and pick up a copy or two of the collection that we'll be hearing about tonight. The holidays are coming, it's never too early to get started, and I think that our poet tonight would be happy to sign, inscribe, and personalize as you see fit. So we encourage you to visit us there. Thank you so much for your support. And now, without further ado, it is my great honor to welcome to the podium James K. Zimmerman. Of the poems in his most recent collection, The Further Adventures of Zen Patriarch Dōgen, Lynn Schmeidler writes, in poems both playful and profound, Zimmerman taps into the beauty, strangeness, difficulty, and promise of the meditative life. I thought about these poems long after reading them, and I imagine that so will you. A neurodivergent, award-winning writer and frequent Pushcart Prize nominee, James K. Zimmerman's work appears in numerous different journals: Chautauqua, December, Folio, Lumina, Nimrod, Pleiades, Rattle, Salamander, and elsewhere. He is the author of Little Miracles, a collection that we do have some copies of at the back of the room tonight, and Family Cookout, which is a chapbook. It was the winner of the Jessie Bryce Niles Prize, and his most recent, and he's also got a forthcoming collection. Late breaking news. The forthcoming, The Unbroken Circle, Unending Thread. Tonight we are here to celebrate his recent collection, The Further Adventures of Zen Patriarch Dōgen. Please join me in welcoming to the stage James K. Zimmerman.
The passing of the torch. Gotta put this on here, right? There we go. Okay, thank you all for coming. That was the performance. Thank you, Sam, for that introduction. Thank you to Junction Arts and Media. Thanks to Tessa and Emma also, who are in the back there. So I'll be reading from Zen Patriarch Dōgen, and also some from the forthcoming book as well. So the premise of this book is that Dōgen, who was a 13th century Zen master and founder of the Sōto school of Zen, shows up now in the 21st century and is curious about 21st century life, and so investigates some of that, as well as bringing his teachings with him. So the book is essentially in his voice, more or less. And his fundamental belief or teaching was that sitting meditation itself is enlightenment. Nothing further than that, even though he was a very prolific writer, and it's kind of paradoxical to write about something that you can't use words for. So, but anyway. And so I want to quote the epigram from the book, which is something that he wrote. Each moment is all being. Each moment is the entire world. Reflect now whether any being or any world is left out of the present moment. And so in this first poem, I imagine how he might teach meditation in the current world, and a focus on, as is usual with meditation, concentration and focus, but also developing panoramic awareness. That's awareness of everything that is happening in the present moment. And also that silent meditation is never silent. There's always stuff going on out there and here. And so you'll find that there's a lot of sound in this poem as well as silence. It's called Meditation, Still Life with Bell. Beginning. Bell rings once, waves of breath, breath of bell, dying away. Shuffle, sigh, settle, discomfort in the cushion. Comfort in whispers of thought. Listen to the waking. Middle. Waves of air create bark. Bark creates dog. Waves of air create whistle. Whistle creates bird. Listen to the rhythm. Rhythm creates pulse. Pulse creates heart. Listen to the air. Listen to the waking. Breath of sound, sound of breath, drift of thought, back to breath. Listen to the waking. End. Bell rings times 3. Beginning waves of bell. Breath of bell. Rustle of sleeve. Sigh, creak of knee. Whisper of voice. Clearing of throat. Clearing. Listen to the waking up. Listen to the waking. Listen to the waking up. Listen to the waking breath of bell dying. Listen to the waking up. Awakening. And this next poem has a lot in it, actually. As I was looking at it earlier today, I realized, well, there's a lot packed in here. One Buddhist concept is dependent origination. That is that everything depends on what came before it and leads to what comes after. It's sort of the concept of karma, basically. So each thing becomes the cause of the next effect, and that effect becomes the cause of the next effect, and so on. So that's one thing in this poem. Also, only the relationship exists, the relationship between things, between your perception of something and the thing itself, and so on. That's the only thing that exists. And also that in meditation, the focus is on phenomenological experience, observation, not on analytical concepts and conceptualization. See what I mean? There's a lot in this poem. This is called Dōgen Strikes the Meditation Bell. What is a bell without a stick? A stick without an oak without sun, a sun without fire. Ripples through air, should I count cycles per second, measure wavelength? A frog leaps, lands in pond water. Concentric ripples touch the shore. Should I count cycles per second? Measure molecules sinking in mud? A bell awakens when struck by hand, by stick, by breeze. Where is the sound when the bell is still? Where is the stillness when the bell rings? Concentric ripples touch tympanum, wriggle through ossicles, nerve, thought, memory. Oops. A melody arises, brings vision of tea and laughter, dancing firelight, or chants for a child newly dead. Where is a bell without brass, brass without copper, an ear without ripples, memory without song? When frog pond ripples, concentric, reach the shore, wavelengths burrow through mud, do they stop singing? Do they stop dancing? Does the chanting end? When sound ripples unconstrained, concentric circles uncaught by an ear cycle out to stars, reach out to galaxies. How do they resonate in emptiness? And there's a concept in Zen and so on, thanks to Judith who introduced this to me, called wabi-sabi, which essentially means that everything has its own demise inherent in it from the moment it's created. So a cup has its shards and its cracks when it's thrown on the wheel, when it's taken out of the kiln. Everything falls apart, including us. But if you can be present with that, there's joy in being able to accept it and let go. So this is called house sitting. Let the bell ring clear. Let floorboards grumble in a rasping voice. Let walls shed plaster in flakes of snow. Let rafters crack like aging bones. Let branches thrum on a mossy roof. Let shoulders rise with breath to breath. Let the bell ring clear and clear again. Let a breeze slide over a windowsill. Let the children laugh. Let the catbird sing. And so Dōgen, being present in the 21st century, was fascinated by a lot of the stuff that we have now. And one of the things that particularly intrigued him, because in Buddhism there's no such thing as a self. A self that's permanent exists through time. There's no underlying experience that you can say is permanent. The only thing that's permanent is change, flux, impermanence. The only thing that abides. So he was curious about the fact that we have self-driving cars. So he decided to take a ride in a self-driving car. So Dōgen asked the salesman, where was the self when the car was a thought? When was the thought a sketch? When was the sketch design? Where was the self on the assembly line in Alabama? On a truck from Mexico? A ship from China? Is the self in the carbon and iron of steel? In the gleam of chrome? The slick skin of PVC? Where is the self in the cowhide of custom bucket seats? Where do the seats go when the car is incinerated? Is the windshield still sand? Was the sand always glass? Where is the self that thinks it can drive itself? In GPS, Bluetooth, ABS, cruise control? Show me the self before the doors were installed. Show me the self after the car is totaled, after the crusher comes. Show me the self after the parts return to earth and sky. And so another sort of fundamental conceptualization that Dōgen brought to life was that you can't experience the truth of reality unless you can see what blocks you from experiencing it. And that we hold these delusions of things like self and permanence and the idea that we can control things where we really can't. And so he focused on bare attention, which means kind of direct experience of reality without intervening thought or anything like that. And they also call it beginner's mind, which I like a lot. It's like the mind, the experience of a child. So this is called Dōgen Elucidates the Myth of Creation. Each of us has a hand in front of the face, palm to nose, fingers splayed before eyes. We cannot see the hand that stops our breath at times, blocks thick lines of vision, creates opacity. We only know what we see between fingers not visible to us, taste what seeps in around the edges, hear only the flapping of thumbs. We greet the world in light that sidles between knuckles and hangnails, lose track of the whorls, the heartline, the lifeline, taking in only what we know already to be true. And so I'd like to read another meditation poem. It actually is more recent, so it didn't get into this. But Pema Chodron, who I think is a wonderful meditation teacher and practitioner, in one of her books, she said, when your mind starts to drift off into thoughts and so on, you're meditating, just say, use the word stay, okay? So I thought, that I like that, you know, because my mind goes off and I can just say stay. And then I realized, okay, when I say stay and I'm meditating, I'm imagining a puppy running around the room and going, stay, you know, stay. And so anyway, so that's where this poem came from. Couple things about it. I used the breed Schnauzer, but it's not because I don't like Schnauzers, even though the poem may suggest that. So I like the sound of the word Schnauzer. And the other thing, this is a disclaimer, okay, which is no dogs were eaten in the writing of this poem. It's called Sitting Meditation with Schnauzer Puppy. And the epigram is stay, stay, just stay. And that's from Pema Chodron. The vision of a Schnauzer puppy chewing up the furniture, bits of couch fluff and chair splinters all over the living room floor, hijacked my mind again this morning, dragging my attention away from counting breaths or chanting "Be Here Now" and wishing for the enlightenment of all beings everywhere. It's funny, since I don't even like Schnauzers, the name Schnauzer sounding like some kind of hot dog. I'll have the Schnauzer with mustard and sauerkraut and a side of slaw, please. If I did have a Schnauzer, which I wouldn't like, I would name it Mitten, or better, Bitten, like Bitte, German for please, as in please stop eating the couch, or please stop gouging the antique spindleback rocking chair, or please stop making me obsess about you so I can't attain one-pointed tranquil mind today. Unfortunately, but fortunately, I don't have a Schnauzer, so my couch and chair are still intact. And I don't have to take some out-of-control puppy 4 times a day for a walk, and it gets all worked up, sniffing where other dogs peed, and then I have to pick up poop with little plastic bags after it chewed up the furniture all morning, interfering with my focus on my breath and the feeling of oneness with all beings everywhere, except Schnauzers. Anyway. Stay. So I'm going to read some poems from the book that is going to come out next year. It's called Unbroken Circle, Unending Thread. The first poem, well, actually, the whole book is kind of about the flow of the season, starting with winter, going through spring, summer, fall, and then kind of with a kind of a coda of winter. Back again. And it's kind of about evolving the seasons, but also evolving myself, and also the connectedness with nature, with an undercurrent of concern about climate change. And this poem is actually about snowshoeing near Woodstock in Mount Tom. So it's called Snowshoeing Mount Tom. The time-worn path rises to greet me in crunch and flurry, slowing my unheeding pace to a rhythm at one with the flow of breath and receding thought. And here, in the early afternoon sunlight some would call lemon yellow, that is closer perhaps to tarnished heirloom silver, I see the trees as a forest. While maples, red and sugar, and pines, white and black, know the forest is a hillside village. And here in the open mind of silence, I hear the path as a bloodline veining itself through the back of the hand of earth, while Norway spruce and white ash see me as a solitary blurred moment, and black pine and red maple hear me as the murmur of a recollected dream forgotten once again. And so I say, when I'm ready to die, bring me here to the forest and leave me to wait in rhythm with the unending heartbeat of wintering trees. And the next poem is an early spring poem, kind of just as the thaw has pretty much happened. There isn't snow on the ground anymore, but it's things that plants have not really come out yet, nor have creatures, most of them. It's called "This is the End of Winter, This is the Beginning." I know I should not pick up by hand this mess of gray fur, russet fur, bones, teeth. The holly branch clipped last fall has waited here on the ground since November, survived the white of snow, the freezing, to be slid under the carcass, to flip the shell of life into the hedge of arbor vitae. I see, I think, a rabbit leg. And look, the lawn wants to be green. This is a persona poem, which is a poem in first-person voice, but not the voice of the poet. Sort of like the Dōgen poems, actually. We had a wonderful experience near Camden, Maine, a couple summers ago. We were kayaking, and a loon showed up in the distance and then went under and showed up right next to the kayaks, and then disappeared and showed up over here, and then swam alongside the kayak and swam under the kayak and like stirred up fish and everything. It was just extraordinary. So I had to write a poem about it. It's called "The Loon God of Maguntacook Lake." You think at first I am simply a black dot woven into the mirror mirage of waveless water, a rock, the head of a beaver, a discarded can of beer. But come closer, I will not flee, afraid, to the safety of a distant sky. No. I will turn to you, show the speckled black and white of my wings, my back a perfect Audubon sketch reflecting the sun's glint on the skin of the lake. Around my neck a lace Elizabethan collar, etching of a stand of birch. Silver white on the black of my head, my eye a ruby stud, the regal curve of my beak. You are in my world now, not I in yours. My bob and drift, ripple and wake. You cannot know where I will reappear when I slide into the water's womb. Like a thought slipping into mind, I reemerge in a lily pad tangle, the gulp and belch songs of hidden bullfrogs. Then again fade into algaic murk, flash beneath you, a torpedo, drive a school of chum to riffle the glassy surface, break the silence 30 yards away, laughing. After all, you named your insanity in honor of my haunting call, harbinger of dusk and fog, your lunate fantasy of who I am. But come closer, swim with me, dive with me, and I will restore your sacred visions, amniotic memories, the wildness of your dreams. This is another persona poem about a little creature that I'm sure many of you are familiar with, who's a friend of a certain sort. gets very attached and very affectionate. It's called Listen to the Deer Tick Sing. I wait for you to come to brush your shoe against the blade of grass I'm sitting on. Touch me with your hand as you reach for one last violet to take home, or pick up a worm to place gracefully in the garden. Even better if you lie on a hillside to watch the sunset or breathe in stars. I will feel your warmth, bury my head next to that freckle on your calf, that hair on your forearm, or just behind the lobe of your left ear. I promise not to take too much blood into my swelling body, only what I think I need. And I will never let you know I am here, though I will love you deeply. Yeah. So this is, now we're in autumn, and this poem is called Praying Mantis. She clings to the window screen like a pole dancer, glazing seductively over her slim green shoulder at me with E.T. eyes. Wonders why I watch so closely from the other side of rippled glass. I tell her I just came in from clipping the last leaves of mint before the dead of winter sets in, and rosemary and thyme. She keeps her serrate forelegs folded like hands in a Dürer print, her days of rapacious predation behind her as a sun-dazed fly saunters by. She has done what needs to be done, laid her eggs in a sack that will harden to ward off frost and snow. And now she waits. By spring, when her 200 babies are born, she'll be gone. At best, a desiccated statue still clinging to the windowsill. I ask her what is the God she prays to. She does not choose to answer. And I'll read one more poem from the forthcoming book and then one more from Dōgen. This is called Teach a Man to Fish, and it's really kind of an amalgam of various experiences of mine throughout my life with fishing. Give a man a fish, and he will crave the subtle flavor of sole, scallions, and garlic, salmon's oily meat glazed with soy and maple syrup, or soft catfish flesh within the crunch of deep-fried corn. Teach a man to fish, and he will learn to crave the bobber tucking under the river's skin like the nod of a head when a dream tugs from below the ripples of sleep. And he will wait to savor a rainbow trout with a barbless hook in its lip, the roiling flash of a school of cocktail blues, the breach of a smallmouth bass, or steady insistence of flounder deep in the folds of an ocean floor. Teach a man to fish, and he will learn to brave the flop and gasp, the flapping of gills, the sharp slice through vertebrae just behind the head, the gutting from anus to throat, blood spattering on deck, dock, shoes. And he will learn to read ripples on water, the inverse of a breeze's path, the easy flick of a cast that lands the lure or bait where it needs to be, at a sunken log, the seam of a stream, or deep in the belly of the ocean. Teach a man to fish, and if he is fortunate, he will learn the quietude of early morning mist in a birch canoe, evening shadows under sail, the beauty of the placid lulls and rolling surges of water, the tranquility of a day when nothing takes the hook at all, and a meal of beans, sunset, and roasted corn satisfies his craving. And so I'll read one more out of this. I just want to again thank you folks, and also Sam and Emma and Tessa for arranging this. I appreciate it. This poem is called Dōgen Sits at the Water's Edge. Waves leave behind the ocean that birthed them, become artisans not of white froth, but voices of pebble and boulder, hiss and crash, hiss and crash. Show me the boundary, the limits. How can there be an edge to this moment that finds its way to sand like cormorants to chum, like chum to kelp and lichen? That finds its way to pelagic pulse like a song sung by drums, the rhythm of hands, gullwing, flutter of beach plum blossoms. That finds its way to soft mist, salt air, visions interweaving rock, pebble, sand, and spume, until they disappear in the ebbing embers of sunset. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Cheers. I don't know what we do now.
Are you open for questions? Questions or comments?
Sure. Yeah.
So, I, of course, it was lovely.
Thank you.
All the words and the images, but I was so struck with the rhythm.
Huh.
And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about how you have developed, what you've learned about that, how you...
About the rhythm,
yes, yes.
yeah. Well, my first career was as a musician and a songwriter and so on. So, and music has been a huge part of my life since I demanded piano lessons when I was 4, so that tells you something. So yeah, I think the music is in me and then comes out through the words. But I do focus, I want it to sound right as well as look right on the page, yeah.
When you get the words and the images, does the rhythm come with it, or do you have to work with that to get the rhythm?
That's a good question. I think a lot of the time it just comes with it. I get into a kind of state of mind where it just, I don't know where it comes from. You know, a lot of writers, musicians, poets, etc., say they have no idea where what they write comes from. And, you know, I think that's because in the neurobiology of the brain, the parts of the brain that are the executive functioning part, you know, what we call the ego or the monitoring, that shuts down when you're in improvisation or creative state of mind. So it's almost akin to being in a dream. So a lot of that I think just happens, and then I go back and I'll even edit poems after they've been published. So I do a lot of that as well. Yeah. Yeah.
There does seem to be like a conscious element of your work, because there's a philosophy behind it, and you talk about that a lot at the beginning of your poem. I'm sorry. There does seem to be some conscious element you're working with.
The conscious.
You talk about it at the beginning of the poems, that you're getting this philosophy into the work.
Yeah.
How do you think that plays with what you were just saying? There's some tension there.
Yeah,
A
couple. Yeah, good question. A couple of things. One of which is that I'm a long-term meditator, and my spiritual life is, or that contemplative life is extremely important and sort of central. And the other thing is that I'm a psychologist. So, I mean, I think what I like to say is that I became a poet in order to be able to afford being a psychologist. Because poets make so much money, you know. But that's part of it. So I'm very interested in consciousness and how we experience the world, in terms of the psyche, but also in terms of as close as possible to that direct experience of reality without the intervening, you know, scrims and veils of thought. So I guess, does that help? Does that answer the question?
I need the help of a psychologist. What time are you available?
There's one from about 30 years ago, yes. You can still get it on Amazon, actually. Yeah, Judah.
Jim, do your poems ever rise out of your meditation? Do they?
Oh yeah, a lot of the Dōgen ones came out of that. In fact, I would say some of the Dōgen poems arose before I knew I was writing a book about or through or with Dōgen. I don't know what you call it really, but a number of the poems were written before, and then I realized, oh, I'm writing a group of poems that will work as a book, and then, I mean, this guy was extraordinary, this Dōgen guy. So I just felt like, you know, I brought that in. Yeah.
I really enjoy how you do that with Dōgen, how you have let him enter into this period of time now through you. And the poem about self-driving car raises the question about AI.
Yes, very much so. And whether does AI have consciousness? Does AI have a self? Right.
And Alexa, for that matter, or Siri, all those people.
Right. Yeah. All those.
Could be the next poem.
I did write one called AI Struggles with an Existential Crisis.
Oh, okay.
That was recently published. Yeah. 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 And AI was in great pain, I have to tell you. Yeah.
So, okay, so do you, because you wrote several persona poems, I'm just wondering, do you approach those any differently from...
Say it again.
I'm sorry. Do you approach your persona poems any different? I might need that. Any differently from the way you're...
From the other ones?
Yes.
I love getting into the perspective of something other than myself.
Okay.
And I think that's partly, you know, why I gravitated toward psychology and trying to understand other people from their own perspective. But I really like to inhabit other creatures. I wrote a poem about an autobiography of a dying tree, and I got into the first-person voice of the tree. You know, so I just I'm fascinated by how that works and how I can imagine other people and creatures and beings, how they would experience things.
I really liked your loon poem. Is that in the next collection?
Yeah.
Okay.
I love that poem myself,
I love that poem.
because the loon poem, that experience was just so transcendent. I mean, Jan was there too, and it was extraordinary.
You let it follow. You let us, or whatever. You entered into the loon and so much that it was really it had a flow.
Oh, good, great, thanks. Any other questions?
When did you realize you were a poet? You said you started music as a little child.
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. I would say, you know, I wrote poems as a kid. I wrote poems when I was in college, like most of us do. And then after that I was writing songs, and I was in the music business for about 12 years, 13 years. So a lot of it was focused on that. And then, you know, along the way I'd write a poem every once in a while, but then I'd say about a little more than 15 years ago, I decided I needed a creative outlet again, other than being a therapist, which is also very creative, but in a different way. And I didn't want to write songs again, because with songs I really felt like I would need to get out there and perform them and so on. And with poems, you can, obviously, because I'm doing that, but you can also just write them and, you know, whatever. Also, writing songs is much more restrictive, because usually it has to be a relatively steady rhythm and also rhyme. And I feel constrained by rhyme. I mean, you'll find in the poems there are a lot of internal rhymes, but they're not end rhymes. But the music is, as you notice, the music is definitely in there, yeah. So I'd say, you know, I started writing poetry relatively seriously about 15 years ago.
What kind of songs do you write? And were you writing them for you to play and perform?
At first, yeah. When I finished college, I should say. My father would be upset if I said left college. I finished college. Then I came to New York to be in the music business and thought I was immediately going to be a star. You know, I mean, you know, it's like 21. Yeah, you know, and I actually came because someone asked me to play guitar on his album, but then I realized, well, I can write these things too, so I started writing songs, and I did the whole singer-songwriter route, and then
So kind of guitar with pop songs or folk songs?
Well, at one point, because my last name is Zimmerman and Bob Dylan's real name is Zimmerman, right? And my voice apparently sounded like James Taylor, so people referred to me as Taylor Dylan. So, I wrote songs that were, it was a wide range. I mean, as you can see, I think from the poems, I write a wide range of poems, and so it was a lot of different kinds of things. Yeah, yeah. And then I got into arranging and production, and backup singing, and all sorts of stuff that you get into in the music business. And I know what you're thinking, but not that.
What am I thinking?
Any other questions or anything?
Well, I hate to keep asking questions. I just have one more.
Sure.
I'm also a psychologist.
Oh.
And I'm wondering how you...
My condolences, by the way.
From Music City, Nashville, so...
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So, a lot of people that combine psychology and music, how would you say that your poetry and your music, your influence of the arts really informs your psychology practice?
As a therapist?
Yes.
Wow, what a great question. I think the thing that interweaves everything is the effort to be fully present. That's basically,
I love that
yeah,
answer.
yeah. I think that's as close as I can get to that.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
This isn't a question, it's just a comment. I think one of the characteristics of good poetry is that it evokes similar experiences on the part of the audience. And so I want to tell you that your loon poem reminds me of an experience I had with a dolphin in the Galapagos.
Oh, great.
Who followed me around and raced with me and then came back and said, hey, I was winning. And anyway.
It's amazing, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're more intelligent than animals. I think we are differently intelligent. And, I think research is more and more moving in that direction. But we were in Africa a number of years ago, and you watch the elephants out in their own, milieu, and boy, you can tell that they are communicating now. All this evidence about how they know each other's names, which is amazing. And now, marmoset monkeys have specific names for each other, and so there's that. But also, we watched elephants play, and they were clearly playing. The little elephants were banging into each other and knocking each other over, and so yeah. I mean, I think we are differently intelligent, and sometimes substantially dumber than a lot of them. Yeah, or worse. Yeah. Anyway. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you once again, James K. Zimmerman. Thank you to all of you for joining us.